I stood at the pulpit, my father's casket feet away, when my brother stormed down the aisle, waving papers. "Stop the eulogy," he shouted. "Dad left everything to me." As the funeral guests gasped, I wondered how I could have missed the monster hiding in my own family. My name is Maria Rodriguez. I'm 31 years old, and until 3 months ago, I had what most would call a normal life in Phoenix, Arizona. I worked as an elementary school teacher, lived in a modest apartment with my rescue cat Milo, and spent Sunday dinners with my father at the small house where I grew up. My father, Gabriel Rodriguez, was a retired postal worker who had raised my brother Alex and me after our mother died of cancer when I was 8. Dad was quiet but steady, the kind of man who never missed a school play or forgot a birthday. He wasn't perfect, but he showed up every day for 23 years, making sure we never felt the absence of our mother too deeply. Alex is 5 years older than I am. He moved to San Diego after college for a finance job, coming home only for major holidays. I stayed close, partly because someone needed to check in on Dad as he got older, and partly because I loved our quiet routine together. The trouble began last fall. Dad started looking tired. His usually robust appetite diminished to picking at his food during our Sunday meals. When I suggested he see a doctor, he'd wave me off with a simple, "Getting old, Maria. Nothing to worry about." But there was something to worry about. By winter, he'd lost 20 pounds and developed a persistent tremor in his left hand. The doctors ran tests and found elevated levels of arsenic in his system. They asked if he worked with chemicals or pesticides. He didn't. "Environmental exposure," they finally declared after more tests. "Possibly from the soil in your garden or old pipes." They prescribed treatments and told him to avoid potential sources of contamination. For a while, he seemed to improve. Then came the rapid decline in March. One Sunday, I arrived to find him confused, barely able to stand. I rushed him to the hospital, but 3 days later, he was gone. "Heart failure," accelerated by his weakened condition, the doctors said. I was devastated, but had little time to process my grief before the funeral. Alex flew in immediately after I called with the news, taking charge of the arrangements with an efficiency that seemed both helpful and strangely eager. "I'll handle everything," he insisted, patting my shoulder. "You take care of yourself." I was grateful then. Now I understand he was making sure I stayed away from the paperwork. The day of the funeral arrived with a clear blue sky that seemed wrong for the occasion. I prepared a eulogy celebrating Dad's quiet strength and his devotion to family. As the oldest living relative spoke first, I noticed Alex checking his watch repeatedly and shifting in his seat. When my turn came, I had barely made it through the first paragraph when Alex interrupted, striding down the aisle with a folder clutched in his hand. "I'm sorry, but this needs to be addressed now," he announced to the stunned congregation. "Dad left a new will last month. Everything, the house, his savings, everything comes to me. Maria gets nothing." The funeral director tried to intervene, suggesting this wasn't the time or place, but Alex was insistent. I stood frozen at the pulpit, watching my brother wave papers at our family and friends, declaring himself the sole inheritor of our father's modest estate. I finished the eulogy somehow, my voice hollow as I described a father who taught us about fairness and family loyalty, while my brother sat smugly in the front row. After the service, relatives approached with awkward condolences, their eyes filled with questions I couldn't answer. "Is it true?" my Aunt Carmen whispered, clutching my hands. "Gabriel would never cut you out like that." "I don't know," I answered honestly. "This is the first I'm hearing about any new will." Alex avoided me at the reception, surrounded by a buffer of distant cousins. When I finally cornered him in the kitchen, his face was a mask of practiced sympathy. "It's what Dad wanted, Maria," he said, sliding the will across the counter. "See for yourself. It's signed and notarized from last month." I stared at the document, my father's signature at the bottom looking slightly off, the loop of the G too tight, the L too straight. But grief plays tricks on the mind, and I couldn't be sure. "Why would he do this?" I asked, my voice breaking. "We never even discussed a new will." Alex shrugged. He was disappointed you never did more with your life, teaching elementary school, renting that tiny apartment. He told me he worried you'd waste whatever he left you. The words cut deep, precisely where my insecurities lived. Had my father really seen me as a disappointment? The thought was almost as painful as losing him. I need time to process this, I said, pushing the will back toward Alex. Take all the time you need, he replied, slipping the document into his jacket pocket. But the house needs to be cleared out by the end of the month. I'm putting it on the market. That night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by photo albums, searching my father's face in pictures for any sign of the disappointment Alex claimed he felt. Instead, I found only the same gentle smile in photo after photo at my college graduation, helping me move into my first apartment, and standing beside me at the school where I taught when I received my Teacher of the Year award 2 years ago. Something wasn't adding up. The next morning, I called the attorney listed on the will, a Stanley Winters I'd never heard my father mention. His receptionist informed me cheerfully that Mr. Winters had only opened his practice 3 months ago. Convenient timing for a new lawyer to handle my father's final wishes. With Alex still in town, I decided to visit our family home one last time. He was out meeting with a real estate agent, giving me the perfect opportunity to look around. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, something that might explain why Dad would cut me out so completely. I started in his bedroom, searching through drawers and the closet, finding nothing unusual. The kitchen yielded only outdated spices and the collection of recipe cards he'd kept from our mother. In the living room, family photos stood exactly where they'd always been, including several of me that a disappointed father might have removed. Finally, I entered his small home office, a converted bedroom where he paid bills and kept family records. The desk contained the usual papers, utility statements, insurance policies, birthday cards I'd sent over the years, carefully preserved in the top drawer. Then I noticed his college diploma hanging slightly crooked on the wall, unusual for my meticulous father. When I went to straighten it, the frame moved oddly, as if attached to something behind it. I carefully removed it from the wall to discover a small safe built into the drywall, its door slightly ajar. My heart raced as I pulled it open. Inside was a digital voice recorder, a USB drive, and a letter in an envelope with my name written in my father's unmistakable handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened the letter first. "Maria," it began, "if you're reading this, something has happened to me before I could handle this situation properly. I need you to know that Alex has been pressuring me to change my will. I've been recording our conversations as evidence. What's more troubling is that I believe he may be responsible for my declining health. I've been testing samples of the coffee he insists on bringing me every time he visits. Please take this to Detective Raymond Ortiz at the Phoenix PD. He's an old friend and will know what to do. I love you, my daughter. Stay strong, Dad." The letter slipped from my fingers as my world tilted on its axis. I picked up the voice recorder with numb fingers and pressed play. "Sign the papers, Dad." Alex's voice was impatient and hard in a way I'd never heard before. "You don't need to leave Maria anything. She's got her teaching job. I'm the one with the investment opportunity of a lifetime, but I need capital now." "I'm not changing my will, Alex." My father's voice sounded weak and tired. "The house and savings will be split between you both, as your mother would have wanted." "You're not listening to me." The sound of something slamming made me flinch. "I need this money. You have no idea what kind of trouble I'm in." I listened to 3 more recordings, each more disturbing than the last. In the final one, dated 2 weeks before his death, my father's voice was slurred and confused. "Did you put something in my food again, Alex? I can taste it this time." "You're imagining things, old man. Drink your coffee and sign these papers." "I'm not signing anything. Get out of my house." "Fine, have it your way. But remember, no one will believe you over me. The respected financial advisor versus the confused old man with tremors. Who do you think wins that one?" The recording ended, and I sat frozen on my father's office floor, the pieces falling into horrible places. The arsenic poisoning was attributed to environmental factors, the sudden decline, the mysterious new will. My brother killed our father. I carefully packed the recorder, USB drive, and letter into my purse. As I did, I heard the front door open. Alex was back earlier than expected. "Maria," he called, his voice echoing through the house. "What are you doing here?" I quickly straightened the diploma on the wall, hiding the safe. "Gathering some photos," I called back, forcing my voice to remain steady. "I want a few memories." Alex appeared in the doorway, his expression suspicious. "Did you find anything interesting?" "Dad's old papers," I said, gesturing to the desk drawers I had left open. "Nothing special." He seemed to relax slightly. "Well, don't take anything important. I need to go through everything for the estate paperwork." "Of course," I replied, my heart pounding so loudly I was certain he could hear it. I was leaving anyway. That night, I copied all the files from the USB drive and the recorder before contacting Detective Ortiz the next morning. He agreed to meet me at a coffee shop away from my apartment. Detective Ortiz was in his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes that had seen too much. He listened without interrupting as I explained everything, then carefully examined the evidence I had brought. "Your father reached out to me about 2 months ago," he finally said. "He was concerned but didn't have enough proof yet. He wanted to know how to legally record conversations in Arizona." "And now?" I asked, hope flaring in my chest. He sighed. "These recordings are compelling, but we need more to prove murder. The will forgery might be easier to establish. I'd like to bring in a handwriting expert." "So you believe me?" "I do," he said. "But belief and legal proof are different animals. We need to be careful how we proceed. Your brother can't know we're investigating until we have enough to move forward with charges." I nodded, understanding settling like a weight on my shoulders. This would be a long game. If you're still with me in this story, I'd appreciate it if you could like this video. I still remember the shock of that moment, discovering my brother's betrayal, and I'm curious if anyone else has experienced something similar with family. Let me know in the comments below. Over the next few weeks, I lived a double life. On the surface, I accepted Alex's explanation about the will, even helping him clear out the house while he prepared to return to San Diego. All the while, I worked with Detective Ortiz, gathering more evidence. The handwriting expert confirmed my suspicion. The signature on the will was a forgery, though a skilled one. Alex had practiced carefully but missed subtle details in our father's handwriting that only became clear under expert examination. The medical evidence was trickier. We needed to prove that Alex had been the one administering arsenic to our father. I remembered the coffee he always brought during his visits and mentioned it to Ortiz. "Your father kept samples?" he asked, surprised. "According to his letter, but I haven't found them yet." "We need those samples, and we need to search his financial records. Arsenic isn't something most people have lying around." I nodded, understanding the challenge. "He has a storage unit where he keeps financial records. The key should be in the house somewhere." Finding that key became my mission. I volunteered to help Alex pack up the garage, using the opportunity to search through toolboxes and drawers while he was busy elsewhere. On the third day, I found it taped beneath Dad's workbench with a small label reading, "Storage B14." That night, after Alex went to dinner with an old college friend, I drove to the storage facility. Unit B14 was small, containing mostly boxes of tax returns and old family mementos. In the back corner, I found a plastic container labeled coffee samples with dates that corresponded to Alex's visits. Beside it was a small notebook with my father's handwriting, documenting when Alex had visited and when he'd experienced symptoms afterward. I called Detective Ortiz immediately. "This could be what we need," he said after I described my findings. "Don't move anything. I'll get a warrant and meet you there in an hour." While waiting, I continued searching through the financial boxes, discovering something unexpected: bank statements showing large transfers from my father's accounts to Alex over the past year. Nearly $200,000 had been drained away, far more than my father would have willingly given, even to help his son. When Ortiz arrived with the warrant, he brought a crime scene technician who carefully collected the coffee samples and the notebook. "We'll test these immediately," he promised. "In the meantime, we've been looking into your brother's finances. He's in serious trouble, gambling debts, failed investments. He was being threatened by some very dangerous people. So he decided to kill our father for the inheritance," I said, the words bitter in my mouth. "It looks that way, but we need to be certain before we move. If he suspects we're onto him, he could run." The next day brought the first real twist in our investigation. The lab results came back for the coffee samples. "It's not arsenic," Ortiz told me over the phone. "There are traces of several heavy metals and a compound used in rat poison. He was mixing toxins to avoid detection of any specific poison." "Is that enough to arrest him?" "Almost. We're also following the money trail. Your brother purchased these compounds through a series of online transactions using gift cards. He thought he was being clever, but he made mistakes." I felt sick imagining Alex methodically researching poisons, purchasing them, and then feeding them to our father week after week. How could my own brother be capable of such calculated cruelty? But the true shock came 3 days later when Ortiz called me to his office. He slid a folder across his desk with an expression I couldn't read. "We found something else while investigating Alex's finances," he said. "Something about your mother's death 23 years ago." My hand froze halfway to the folder. "What about it? She died of cancer." "That's what the death certificate says. But we found old insurance documents in your father's storage unit. Very large policies on your mother's life, with your father as the beneficiary." "That's normal, isn't it?" I asked as confusion crept in. "Yes, what's not normal is this." He opened the folder to reveal photocopies of old medical reports. "Your mother's oncologist noted several times that her symptoms didn't align with the expected progression of her disease. He requested more tests that were never completed because your father transferred her to another facility." The implications hit me like a physical blow. "Are you saying my father poisoned my mother?" Ortiz's expression was grim. "We can't be certain without exhumation, but there are about 2 parallels. The insurance payout was large, nearly $500,000 in 1999. "That's impossible," I whispered, though something cold was unfurling in my stomach. "He loved her. He kept her photo by his bed for 23 years. People are complicated, Maria, and sometimes the ones who display the most grief are hiding the most guilt." I left the police station in a daze, memories reconfiguring themselves in my mind. Dad's insistence on preparing all of Mom's meals during her illness. The way he dismissed her complaints about strange tastes in her food as medication side effects. His surprising financial stability after her death, despite a postal worker's modest salary. When I returned to my apartment, I dug through old photo albums again, this time looking with new eyes. I found a picture from a family vacation months before Mom got sick, Dad standing slightly apart, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Another from their anniversary dinner that same year, Mom gazing at him adoringly while his expression remained distant and distracted. Had I been blind my whole life? Was my beloved father actually a murderer? And what did that make Alex, not a killer, but a mirror reflection of the father he'd grown to resemble? I barely slept that night, tossing between nightmares of my mother calling for help and my father standing silently by. By morning, I had made a decision. This wasn't about justice anymore. It was about truth, no matter how painful. I called Ortiz and authorized the exhumation of my mother's remains. The process would take time, legal paperwork, and court approval, but it was necessary. While we waited, the investigation into Alex continued, gathering momentum as financial records revealed the extent of his desperation. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Alex himself. "The house sale is finalized," he said, sounding pleased. "The money should clear by next week." "That's great," I replied, my voice carefully neutral. "Are you coming back to Phoenix to close everything out?" "Actually, yes. There are a few loose ends to tie up. I thought we could have dinner, maybe talk about setting up a small trust for you after all. Dad would have wanted you to have something." The condescension in his tone made my skin crawl, but I kept my voice steady. "That would be nice. When do you arrive?" "Friday afternoon. I'll text you the details." After hanging up, I immediately called Ortiz. "He's coming back on Friday. He wants to have dinner with me." Perfect timing. The DA has approved the arrest warrant based on the evidence we've gathered. We'll take him into custody when he arrives. But something didn't feel right. Alex was too smart to return if he suspected anything. Unless... Detective, what if he's coming back to deal with something he missed? What if there's more evidence he needs to destroy? There was a pause on the line. "You might be right. Let's not tip our hand yet. Meet with him as planned. We'll have officers nearby, but let's see what he does first." Friday arrived with a thunderstorm that matched my turbulent emotions. Alex texted that he'd landed and wanted to meet at an upscale restaurant downtown at 7. I agreed, then spent the afternoon in anxious preparation, going over the plan with Ortiz one final time. I arrived at the restaurant early, selecting a table near the back where the detective's team could observe us discreetly. Alex appeared precisely at 7, looking polished in an expensive suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "Maria," he greeted me with a kiss on the cheek that felt like an insult. "You look well." "Thanks. How's San Diego?" "Busy. The market has been volatile, but I'm making it work." He ordered an expensive bottle of wine without consulting the menu. "I wanted to talk to you about Dad's estate." "I thought that was settled with the will," I said carefully. He smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes. "Yes, but I've been thinking. Your family, after all. I'm setting up a small trust for you, nothing major, but enough to help with a down payment on a house someday. Get you out of that apartment." "That's generous," I replied, studying him. "What prompted this change of heart?" "Reflecting on what Dad would want." He swirled his wine glass. "Speaking of Dad, did you find anything interesting when you were helping clean out the house?" And there it was, the real reason for his return. "Like what?" I asked innocently. "Oh, family photos, keepsakes, anything you want to hold on to." "Not really," I lied. Though I did find it strange that his diploma was hanging crooked in his office. Dad was usually so particular about things like that. I watched his face carefully and caught the flicker of alarm in his eyes before he masked it with indifference. "I hadn't noticed," he said, taking a large swallow of wine. "Listen, I need to stop by the house tonight. The new owners don't take possession until Monday. There are a few personal items I forgot to pack." "The diploma," I suggested quietly. His eyes snapped to mine, narrowing slightly. "Among other things." "What things, Alex?" Dad's voice recorder. The samples of poisoned coffee. Or maybe his letter explaining that you were pressuring him to change his will. The color drained from his face. "What are you talking about?" "I found the safe behind the diploma, Alex. I know what you did to Dad. And the police know too." He recovered quickly, leaning forward with a sympathetic expression. "Maria, Dad was confused toward the end. He was paranoid, imagining things. Those recordings are the ramblings of a sick old man." "The toxicology reports aren't ramblings. Neither is the money trail showing you buying the exact poisons found in his system." His expression hardened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? The gambling debts, the failed investments, the threats from people you owed money to. You needed Dad's money, but he wouldn't give you enough, so you decided to take it all." "You can't prove anything," he hissed, but his eyes darted toward the exit. "Actually, we can." Detective Ortiz appeared beside our table, badge in hand. "Alexander Rodriguez, you're under arrest for the murder of Gabriel Rodriguez and the forgery of legal documents." As Ortiz recited the Miranda rights, Alex's face contorted with rage. "This is ridiculous. She's making it all up. Dad changed his will because he loved me more. He always did." The restaurant had gone silent, patrons staring as the officers handcuffed my brother and led him away. His last words to me, shouted over his shoulder, cut deep despite everything I now knew. Ask her about the storage unit. Ask what else she found. She doesn't know who Dad really is. In the aftermath, I sat alone at the table, hands shaking as I realized Alex knew about the other evidence, the files suggesting our father had murdered our mother. Somehow, he had known all along. The next morning, I met with Ortiz in his office, still processing the revelation. He knew, I said without preamble. Alex knew about Dad and Mom. Ortiz nodded grimly. We found a letter in your brother's hotel room. Your father confessed to him 5 years ago when Alex confronted him about the financial irregularities he had discovered while helping with tax returns. So Alex has been blackmailing Dad all this time. It appears so. The payments increased recently, which aligns with your brother's growing financial troubles. When your father finally refused to pay more, Alex decided to speed up his inheritance plan. I felt sick. They were both monsters. It seems that way. The preliminary results from your mother's exhumation confirm high levels of arsenic and thallium in her remains. Different from the cocktail used on your father, but they are effective. So Alex learned from Dad's method, like father, like son. With one key difference, Ortiz noted. Your father was never caught. The trial came 6 months later. With overwhelming evidence and no real defense, Alex was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. I testified against him, meeting his hateful glare with calm determination. He had one opportunity to speak to me directly during a brief recess when the guards were momentarily distracted. You think you've won, he whispered venomously. But you're like him, calculating, patient. You hit it better, but the same blood runs in your veins. I stepped back, refusing to let his words penetrate. No, Alex, I'm like our mother, and I finally got justice for her too. His expression faltered, confusion replacing anger. What are you talking about? Dad has been posthumously charged with Mom's murder. His reputation is destroyed. The community foundation he donated to has removed his name from its building. His beloved legacy is gone. It was a small victory, but watching the realization spread across his face brought the first sense of peace I had felt since finding that hidden safe. In the months that followed, I sold my apartment and moved to Tucson, starting fresh at a new school district. I declined my part of my father's estate, instead directing it to a foundation supporting victims of domestic violence. It felt like the only way to wash the money clean. Detective Ortiz calls occasionally to check on me. During our last conversation, he mentioned something that has stayed with me. You know, he said, in all my years on the job, I've never seen someone handle such devastating revelations with the grace you've shown. Most people would have broken under the weight of those truths. I didn't tell him about the nights I still wake up screaming, or the therapy sessions where I try to reconcile the father I loved with the monster he truly was. Instead, I thanked him for his kindness. The hardest part isn't knowing that my brother is a murderer. It's realizing that the father I grieved never really existed. The man who taught me to ride a bike, who sat patiently helping with homework, who came to every parent-teacher conference with quiet pride, that man was a carefully constructed facade hiding a calculating killer. Yet in the end, it was his own meticulous nature that brought justice. He documented Alex's crimes just as carefully as he had once planned his own. Perhaps, in his final months, facing his own mortality, some shred of conscience emerged. Or perhaps he simply couldn't bear being outmaneuvered at his own game. Either way, the truth is now part of the public record. 2 Rodriguez men, father and son, both killers. And me, the daughter and sister who exposed them both. People sometimes ask if I regret uncovering these terrible truths. Wouldn't it have been easier to believe the comfortable lies? Perhaps. But I've come to realize that living honestly with painful truths is better than living comfortably with destructive lies. My mother's headstone now bears her true epitaph, beloved wife and mother, whose life was stolen too soon. My father's grave remains unmarked, his ashes scattered to the wind as per the original will, the real one we found in the safe deposit box at his bank. As for me, I'm learning to define myself outside the shadow of my family's dark legacy. I teach my students about integrity and truth, knowing the weight those values carry. On my desk sits a small framed photo, not of my father or brother, but of my mother, smiling in the sunshine a year before she died. I keep it as a reminder that even in families with the darkest secrets, there can still be light worth remembering. They thought they were the clever ones, my father and brother. Two generations of calculating manipulators who viewed family as something to use rather than cherish. But they made one critical mistake. They underestimated the quiet daughter, the one who watched and waited, and finally brought their house of cards tumbling down. My father once told me that family legacy was the most important thing a person could leave behind. He was right, though not in the way he intended. His legacy now is a cautionary tale of justice long delayed but finally delivered. And mine is the truth that set us all free. If you found this story meaningful or it resonated with you in any way, please subscribe to the channel for more stories of truth, justice, and family secrets revealed. Sometimes the most important stories are the hardest ones to tell, but they're the ones that need to be heard the most.